Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow. In today's episode, it's a really first of a series of episodes. I'm going to try to attempt to do something that I've not done before, but I always had the idea of, and that is to do a review on some written work about anime. Okay, so people have been using anime to write essays, to write like theses and documents, and obviously homework assignments and that kind of stuff about anime. And so in this episode is going to be a start of a long chain of episodes, because obviously to fully do an analysis on a written work, it may require me several episodes to go over different points and that kind of stuff. But um, this is one of these sort of rare situations I get to do this. So before I begin and talk about this, I want to remind people to go down below, click like, and click subscribe. Again, any sort of comments and things that you would write down does help the YouTube algorithm. So at least hitting that like definitely does really help. So do please do that. Again, if you want to support me financially, I do have the super thanks button available, as well as the PayPal and Patreon links. Again, I've now added a little more content to the Patreon. So again, if people who are interested in my new ebook that's out, I've now added video versions of that available now. Again, so again, you can go to the Patreon, you can log in for free, and again, I've made it so that any of the paid accounts, has access to that first ebook for free, and the video version, you get a massive discount on it as well. So in case you would like to get a video version of the ebook, okay, as well as the audiobook as well. So do check that out. Link is below. Okay, so as I said, in this episode, I'm going to be going through and doing analysis on these written pieces of work. So people have obviously submitted either thesis documents or maybe their homework assignments, or that's for some of the writing, creative writing, or in this case it's whatever studies that they happen to be doing. Okay, and it uses a lot of references to anime, and part of the reason why I made this this channel is to inform people and to record and document history, of this age of anime that we've had in North America. And a lot of people who are doing this kind of research and that kind of stuff are having problems finding actual sources and actual information in regards to this era of anime. Okay, and and I've seen it from people from Crunchyroll and people from various different magazines and that kind of stuff are all interviewing different people and are trying to find information about the origins of how anime got this way. So in today's episode, I've come across a piece of writing. Okay, it does have this sort of a political sort of type of leaning towards it. Okay, and again, I don't want to talk politics and that kind of stuff, and most people don't really care, especially on this particular part of the channel, because my emphasis is on this again, documenting a time period in our history that that transpired and isn't well documented. Not very many people have written too many articles and that kind of stuff about it, and not too many people, especially from this particular era, have basically documented what exactly has gone on in this thing. And so what ends up happening is people tend to rely on things like Google and whatnot to write their essays and to get confirmation bias on their particular works. And this is particularly poor when Google does not show results for things that happened in the 1990s or the 1980s, right? They actually need some people, some interviews, and that kind of stuff to be made. And that's, primarily one of the main functions of my channel here, is to provide this documentation, to show you pictures, to tell you stories and accounts, show you merchandise and things that came from that, and how we came across it, getting this stuff, what this means, tie in things that happen in anime with things that are happening in real life. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do with that. So again, this isn't a typical type of episode, and the way that I'm tackling this episode is maybe a little bit strange and very very long. Okay, but I assure you, even though we are touching a little bit on politics, do not pay attention to it too much because I won't delve too deeply into it. Okay, I'll touch on it, but I won't really get into why what particular things that happen on that, because there's a lot of factors and that kind of stuff, and that's not what this particular channel is really about to. But what I want to address, and which is the most important thing, is when people do research, okay, and they go and try to find information that supports their research, okay, and they use Google and that kind of stuff, this is confirmation bias. The fact that you're specifically looking for information and looking for essentially yes men, okay, people that will say yes to whatever you say, to basically confirm what you're writing. And of course, this is really poor scientific method, right? And since the topic is anime, I want to be this person that comes in and says, okay, using my own accounts, my own and whatever evidence and documentations and that kind of stuff, fan letters and newsletters, merchandise, art books, or whatever that happens to be, that I have available as a historic archive. I want to present it to you and tell my story in helping you understand and build this picture, the story. If you want to, kind of have a vision that's not just in front of you but around you, right? What are all the other factors that transcribe around you? So when I describe what the environment of, let's say, an anime convention in 1991, or some of the funny stories and conflicts and cosplay and that kind of stuff that happened at Comic-Con in '89. Okay, I want to not only tell you the story, I want to see if I can get you some pictures. I want to give you some context of why this is this particular thing happened. Was there any other things happening at the con that might have transpired? What about any sort of popular culture things that were also happening, or news stories that was happening at that particular time that has a significance of why this sort of thing occurred in anime? And this is what I want to present. Okay, this is the history part and the accounting part and of course the recording of and documentating of this kind of history, because as I said, um, we're all getting older, okay, and if we don't tell our story, if we don't get it, told in and documented, then we may become people like Carl Masick, Don Yee, Torrance Smith, all these people who are pivotal members of the anime community, but they're no longer around anymore, and they can't tell their story, and and all the things, whether or not good, bad, conflicts, their opinions on stuff, on how they handled things, and all the inside stories that we can't find on Google, and people didn't post on any sort of form, gets lost. Okay, that part of history is lost, and until someone comes through and documents it, maybe brings out some receipts and brings out some scripts or things of basically historical importance, okay, like these anime artifacts, if you will, okay, um, you know their story will never be fully, as I said, fully appreciated and fully understood, and then it'll be just basically left for interpretation. And one good example I just did a few episodes ago is the story of the most mysterious song on the internet. Okay, the mere fact that it is highly possible that most members of the band who wrote that song are no longer around. Even the producer that probably made that thing is probably, maybe, possibly no longer around. And with that, it may be very impossible to find out who exactly wrote that song and where it came from and that kind of stuff. And it may be just one of those untold, basically unsolved mysteries, right? And in this era, at this particular time, there should be no excuse for these untold mysteries or unsolved unresolved and unsolved anime things in history. Because as I said, we are still very, very young. As I said, we have entered a year of 40 years of anime in North America here. We should be able to have and document our own history and be able to do that, because as I said, we're not that old yet. Not that old yet, so let's get that. Okay, so anyway, I apologize for such a long opening. But yes, so here we're going to be in. I'm going to break this up into smaller episodes, and I'm going to kind of spread them out so that it's more digestible, and people can think about and do the different things rather than one big, huge 5-hour, 6-hour long video. Okay, so I'll break it up for you. All right. So without further delay, let's begin.
I argue that by practicing exclusionary discourses, rec.arts.anime users have shaped the negative networking semantic environment on online American culture, whether intentionally or not. Okay, so you're basically saying that, okay, so these users and these very specific users, okay, from a news group from that basically went defunct, basically 1995, went downhill until about 98 or so. Still had some sort of a negative networking, as you refer to as basically the downplaying and the ignoring of women and that kind of stuff in American anime culture. Okay, so events that happened 30 years ago are impacting this sort of new thing, negative impact, negative networking in today's anime culture. Okay, that's something that's pretty hard to prove, right? Because, for example, you look at all the social media networks that never existed back in that time, and the fact that women are the people that are most likely to use social media. Okay, so they've got all their Instagrams, things for their crafts, their anime, their collections, and that kind of stuff. Their cosplay, because women, generally speaking, have more channels and that kind of stuff tailored towards cosplay and crafts and that kind of stuff. Okay, you can also look at all the different outlets that occurred afterwards too, because streaming did not exist at this particular time. So you're saying that that negative networking, that kind of stuff, impedes those people for doing streaming and having their own content, right? That obviously didn't happen, right? There's obviously Twitch. I mean, sure. 10% of all the most popular streamers and the streamers that make the most amount of money are female. Okay, look at OnlyFans. The majority of the people on there are female, and the highest grossing people on that platform are female. Okay, are you saying that they somehow had influences on those cosplay girls and all that kind of stuff and whatnot to them on a platform that never existed at that time? Pretty hard to that's a pretty bold statement to make, and a hard claim to do. They also played a significant role in establishing the online anime fandom identity in the media, which has been long codified as white. Okay. And I argue it's probably not even that. I mean, sure, in the U.S., okay, the distribution is probably very similar to what the distribution of all things in the U.S., okay? Again, primarily male, obviously, because, again, most of the people who would have these positions are going to be people that work in the government, like, so the .gov, people who are in universities, primarily people that need to use the computer, so computer sciences, electrical engineering, and that kind of stuff, right? So all the people that are in those primarily STEM courses that have the .edu on them, primarily going to be male, okay, obviously. I'm going to probably argue that a large percentage of the people are going to be Asian, okay, not just necessarily white, but like Asian, okay, just because, obviously a lot of the people are going to be obviously things like Japanese people, International students, especially lots of people from China, Hong Kong, and whatnot, right? Maybe not so much China because there wasn't the open immigration policy as they had now, but at least from like Hong Kong and Taiwan and that kind of stuff, definitely a big thing. And Korea was also a big thing too, getting Korean exchange students and that kind of stuff. So, Asian community in the universities and that stuff is very high. People always make that big joke too, and it's true. You ever go to like the University of Berkeley and the bell rings, and you look at say something like the chemistry, engineering wing, right? And like I say, uh, they always comment that the hallway feels it's like a second sort of Chinatown, right? It's like all these Asians come out of their classes and that kind of stuff because that sort of situation actually is kind of true. Okay, a lot of that kind of stuff happens. So I would argue it's not actually it's improper to codify them as white. There's a significant population of them which are Asian in there. I also will comment that some of the major players that were in at that particular moment in the anime thing. I'm going to quote things like Hitoshi Doi. Obviously, he's Japanese. I'm going to also quote the guy from Ranma Project. Okay, he's Mexican. Okay, right. Some of the main key people are not white. Okay, so that's just an incorrect statement. Sure, you can say that in general, but population-wise, that's definitely not correct. Cisgender, okay, this using stupid nouns like that is just gonna say it how it is, right? I mean, if the distribution of the of the U.S. population even now, okay, was it 1.8%? Okay, so you're basically saying we're going to make up a word called cisgender to refer to 98.2% of the population. Why don't we just call them male and female? I mean, geez, okay, come on, let's just get straight. Okay, the people that if they wear that kind of stuff, they're far and few in between, and they just didn't say anything, and it didn't matter. Okay. And by male. Okay, so again, there it is, right? Because the majority of the people who are going to be in these positions, who work for NASA, the IRS, any of the major universities and that stuff, are probably going to be male. Okay, just that's the way it happens to be. Anyway, by a small yet extremely vocal and influential part of the community, regardless of the demographic data demonstrating the opposite. So, yeah, so here we have this, this very narrow, small, extremely, the small part of the community. Even you said it in your own words. This is a small part of the community. All right, and you're right because at this time, even up to 1995, right. People who do not work in these institutions, do not go to university, do not go to any of these sort of major colleges or any government, sort of facilities like the Library of Congress or something like that or whatever. Okay, don't have access to this internet. Okay, they don't have dial-up like AOL and stuff like that that can get access easily to this thing. Okay, I even had problems accessing this thing, even as late as 1992, 93. Had problems accessing this thing. Okay, and fan subbing up to 1,000 fan, like we fan subbed the most number of animes and that kind of stuff at this particular time, and I even had problems getting access to this stuff. So I'm not talking about extremely big players and that kind of stuff, having access and influence and all that, but yeah, even admitting that this is a small percentage of the community. But like all things, like all Karens and stuff like that, they're extremely vocal because when you start saying stuff and whatever and start yelling things out top of your lungs, they tend to be heard. Happy people and people that are satisfied with their product and that stuff are are most vocal. And I get this a lot. Okay, people always commented that some of the people that always spread the most amount of stuff on rec.arts were always the ones that complained about the timing in our fan subs, the fact that I say things, I say nasty words to things like Carl Masek and whatnot about how horrible the dubs are, and how some of how horrible some of the translations and that kind of stuff that come out. Especially for things like even Maison Akaku, okay, which Trish Ledoux was responsible for. I'll make a mention, okay, and we'll get into that later on. Um, you know, people will criticize me for that kind of stuff on there, and again, not being able to access a lot of that stuff, I couldn't respond, and I had no access to that. But the people constantly will argue and say negative things like that, and that's usually what people will blab on about and kick their feet and complain about. But in the end, that was all that was available, so they took it, right? They may have said it on one hand, on the internet, but on the other hand, they're sending in tapes and they're sending in orders to get all of Maison Akaku because they love it so much. Okay, they wanted the anime anyway, even though that it has, maybe the timing's a little bit off or this or that or whatever. But the fact is, nobody else was doing it. Okay, I didn't sit here and bash people saying that you can't say my fans are low. You can't say the translation's bad. You can't say all this other stuff, right? I didn't do the Kathleen Turner thing and fight against the fans. Okay. I'm just, a lot of times, I even made a blanket statement sometimes and told someone to post it. It's like, hey, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm just doing this to make anime more available. Sure, it ain't perfect, but I'm not making money on it. Being straight up front. It's not because I'm left wing or right wing or X wing or Y wing or whatever you want to call it, right? It's not. It has nothing to do with it. It is, here is Japanese anime. I get it that, in order to grow the fandom and things like that, it needs to be in English. Okay? It doesn't need some political message or everything like this. No one cares about that crap. They just say, hey, this is Japanese animation. I need some help with the translation. Can you do that? Yes, I can. I can take that translation, however loose or however good or bad it happens to be. I mean, we used to watch, Chinese martial arts movies, and the dialogue was, "You killed my brother, I killed you." I mean, the dialogue's absolutely stupid, but that's what helped us understand it. Okay, it has nothing to do with, agendas and exclusion and all this other stuff. No, it's just, guys, help me out with this translation and let me help and help me understand and help me enjoy this anime that comes from Japan. Okay, it has nothing to do with these political statements. No, as I said, you want to add that kind of crap on afterwards, and 20 years, 30 years later, that's up to you. You can believe it however you want to believe it. Okay, but I'm just telling you how it is. It is quite simply, what you're basically describing here is basically people, irregardless of whether or not you're, what gender you are, what color you are, male or female. So basically, if you want to put a rant, a rave, bad review, whatever, you most likely are the people that get heard or whatever because you're saying something. People who are satisfied, okay. Because again, we have no review system, right? No one's gonna give me 5 stars for doing the translations for Orange Road. It's that, hey, I have it available. You can sit there and say, okay, well, I heard from other people that the timing's a little bit off, so I'm not gonna get it. But you can see other people who are trading it around and kind of going, well, maybe I should really see this Orange Road thing and whatever. So you might get a copy of it from somebody else, or you trade for it and saying, okay, it's not that bad. Jeez, I mean, I watched it, I enjoyed it, so sure, I'll go and order the rest of it, right? Those are the choices you had. You didn't really have much of another choice, and it has nothing to do with marginalizing people or whatever. It's just, hey, people speak their word, and if you want to take it at face value, you can. If not, or they're trolling you or whatever, or trying to invoke you, well, then that's something that you got to control yourself. Methodology. So, for the purpose of this paper, my study of rec.arts.anime relies solely on Google Groups archive of the Usenet conversations, as it is the only repository displaying information needed here in an accessible manner. Well, this is interesting.
We all have susceptibility to bias. Search engines on the internet are the epitome of confirmation bias. And you're going to use that as evidence that you are correct? No. The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. What does it mean to be skeptical? What does it mean to be convinced by data? A proper skeptic questions what they're unsure of, but recognizes when valid evidence is presented to change their mind.
So this is a situation where we're going to entirely rely on the Google Groups. Okay, so a company, which has been known to delete, content that is not suitable for not only alt-right but alt-left. Okay, so we don't want to have any extremist stuff. We don't want to produce stuff that might be discriminatory in any sort of way. Plus malicious content and all that stuff. So we're just going to delete that. Okay, so that users can have no access to it. So now here you're going to make a paper, okay, which 100% relies on Google. Okay. And all the conversations that. So you're basically going to put all your eggs in this particular basket, okay? Use confirmation bias, okay? So that's basically one of those attributes of scientific work and that kind of stuff, is to use cognitive bias, and one of the cognitive biases is this kind of confirmation bias caused by a search engine. So you're literally using Google, a search engine, to confirm your thesis, your possibly by saying the correct words and searching for that to find articles that match that same thing. Okay, and that is exactly what cognitive bias is. So you're basically surrendering the document to the cognitive bias. Okay, so that's really interesting, and again, so that's what happens when you particularly use Google. So this is basically going through basically using of the Google search engine, basically search engine, to find different conversations in this big massive amount of groups, right? And one of the things that she obviously targeted was using certain phrases and certain words that sort of come up. And a lot of the female predominant figures that were in Japanese animation, she mentions Jane McGuire, Trish Ledoux, Pam Buck, Helen McCarthy, Lorraine White, okay, and Schubert, okay. Again, I mean, I wrote directly to Lorraine White, and I actually wrote different actually put into one of my fan letters, one of the example letter of the thing, right? But again, you can just see more narrowing of these exact sort of arguments and that kind of stuff by her using Trish the Wish and Trish the Bitch. Okay, obviously that was when the entire horrible translations of Viz work and Ranma and that kind of stuff, Meizo no Kaku, sort of occurred, right? But we'll get into those exact messages when we get talk to them, right? But she also comments that as well as the pseudonyms, obviously, because you don't have to use your real name, so a lot of people go on a pseudonym. So how can you tell whether or not that person's a female character or not, or a person or not by the pseudonym? But for the most part, they're probably male. Female posters acknowledging that the use of their male friend, colleague, or partner's email addresses as they had access to the Usenet from the university or research lab. Okay, so again, more information that indicates that a lot of these accounts, even though maybe posted by the male email address, is actually from a female person, because the fact that they don't have access to the internet otherwise, right? You basically Say you're at JPL, and you want to post up a message about soap operas or something or whatever. Okay, so you end up having to use your husband's terminal and email address in order to post such a message. Okay, and so therefore that message will show up under the original user's email address. And again, it just prolongs the fact that not a lot of people had access to this internet news group thing. And even if you did, usually it's because of connections. Even for me, right? I got someone in the FidoNet community that reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got a way that I can get FidoNet messages, that you normally do on your BBS. I can patch that into the internet." Okay, someone approached me about that, right? So otherwise, I still wouldn't have had access to that. I still wouldn't, and even that access is not all that much because I don't actually have my own postable email. So even if someone read a message and that kind of stuff on there, then they can't reply back to me. Okay, and you can see if I had this problem, what else can happen? Spam. Political hate messages and that kind of stuff, right? Because you can post stuff up there and not have a legitimate email address to go against, right? So if you post stuff and you just spam it all over all the news groups, maybe it's advertising, maybe it's Tom Vu, make money fast videos or whatever, and programs and various other scam related type of stuff. You can spam that over all the news groups and all the things like that. Have an email address that doesn't exist, so people can't go against it. And so basically, it's just a big headache for people like the moderators and that kind of stuff to control. And what's worse is because the Usenet works on a push forward system. So basically, once something gets posted, it works off of the mentality of, let's just take this message and we push it forward to the next server. So basically, we'll take note of it, we'll keep a copy of it in our database, and we push that information forward to the next one. So it's actually replicating itself like a virus, literally, all over to each node and to each message board, okay, so that everyone gets a copy of it all over the place, right? So yeah, this is a breeding ground for spam, for hateful content, for totally anonymous content, whether or not be legal or illegal, right? And basically content that can't be regulated over borders, right? So so this is what this sort of anarchy, if you will, happens to all parts of Usenet, not just limited to anime.
Thank you for sticking along and basically staying with it for this long. I really appreciate that. I said again, this is not typical content that I like to to do, and but I think it's very interesting. Not so much for the the topic or whatever of the particular essay here, okay? Because I don't that's probably that's politics and that kind of stuff is something I don't want to get into on this particular channel. But again, the importance of is correctly documenting events that happened in the past, especially in this very important golden era part of anime, and making and setting the record straight. You can make your own interpretations, and as when I remember when I took when I was on jury duty, okay, someone made a very prolific statement, okay, which really shaped the way how I think and interpret things. And this is what he said: you can choose to not believe, partially believe, total believe, none, some, or all of the evidence. Okay, so think about that. You can either and this is it. There's you've provided 6 different possibilities for one particular type of outcome. So if someone presents you a piece of information, you can choose to 0% believe none of it. Okay, you have no confidence in it. You can have some belief or some particular confidence of some level, or you can be totally invested in believing this thing. Okay, but also you can also choose to believe none of the evidence. So, if multiple pieces or one piece of evidence that has different facets of it, you can choose to believe none of that. Maybe some parts of the evidence you deem credible and you will believe some parts of that. Or you trust the evidence, okay, so you fully believe that this evidence is 100% all parts of the evidence, so all the evidence as a whole, and you can choose to believe none of it, some of it, or all of it. And you can choose what level you believe it to, whether or not you just decide to 100% with or 0% confidence in any parts of that, partial confidence in 0 to all of it, or 100% confidence in none or all of it. Okay? Seems kind of confusing, but at the same time, it really resonated with me about how you would learn to interpret things and take the parts that you want to, that you feel credible, okay, and then you can analyze that using critical thinking to determine whether or not you wish to add this to your base of knowledge or disregard it as just total fluff. Or maybe something in the middle. Partially you agree with certain parts, you don't agree with certain parts, you feel fuzzy about certain parts, but you're confident that the evidence is actually true, but you're not really sure. Well, that's so it handles all the different gray zones, both positively on that. So again,
The goal here is to train your mind how to see the world differently, how to question what others say. I've come to realize that there are 3 categories of truth: personal truth, political truths, and the objective truths that shape our understanding of the universe. The interesting thing about an objective truth is that it's true no matter what. Imagine that.
that's just something one story I like to reflect on. But again, we have more episodes of this. This is a fairly long essay, but as I said, I'll split up the episodes and have more of that again. So thank you for staying this long. But again, don't be turned off by the fact of the topic that this is about. Because I'm not going to try to cover the politics and that kind of stuff a little bit. I'll touch on it a little bit just because I have to. But for the most part, I want to stick to the history. All right. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next episode. So until next time, I will see you again.